Well, let's turn to Reform UK now. I'm joined by their head of policy, Zia Yusuf. Prime Minister said in Munich yesterday that your party's pro-Putin. If you were in power in the United Kingdom, you would have joined the coalition of the willing, and we'd be a country that nobody could do business with. Do you agree?
No, it would be quite the opposite. I mean, this is a country now that has basically no economic growth, confirmed again with the latest GDP print. We have a Prime Minister who seems to go around the world trying to negotiate on this country's behalf. What did he come back from in terms of China? All he did was come back and our interests further diminished. This is a Prime Minister who has chosen voluntarily to cede our sovereign British territory in the form of the Chagos Islands and then spend billions of pounds of taxpayers' money to lease it back. This is a laughable joke of a Prime Minister who now, because he is so unpopular, frankly, it's actually a very dangerous thing to do, Trevor, because this is a dangerous time in the world. And we need a leader who is actually going to put the interests of British people first. And what he's doing is responding to his appalling approval ratings at home by sabre-rattling abroad and attacking Nigel Farage.
Yeah, but he said yesterday, and indeed the Foreign Secretary said this morning, that the very same Nigel Farage, soft on Russia, bit pro-Putin.
That's obviously not true. I mean, Nigel was the
only...
Nigel
did say he admired Putin.
Nigel is the only political leader in this country who has confirmed on air that he would indeed shoot down Russian aircraft if they encroached into NATO airspace. And not a single other political leader said that, nor has Keir Starmer. We are crystal clear at Reform. We need Britain. This is a new era. We totally agree. This is a new world order that is emerging now. Britain must start growing again. We need to rebuild. We need to rebuild our manufacturing capability. We need to rearm, and we need to compete on the global stage. What we are doing at the moment, what we had for 14 years under the Tories and continuing under Labour, is the total gutting and destruction of our manufacturing capability. Trevor, we produce fewer cars today than we did 70 years ago. Not 7 years ago, 70 years ago. Our heavy industrial production is at 35-year lows. How are we going to be a powerful country in 5-10 years' time if we can't produce primary steel, if we can't produce any munitions ourselves? We have had jokes of politicians now for years, and Nigel is the only political leader who's going to change that.
You've whizzed off into a very different direction, but I just want to keep you briefly with Munich. Marco Rubio said that European leaders were allowing mass migration to threaten the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our cultures and the future of our people. Do you agree?
I think that's obviously true, and it's not just me who thinks that. I'd argue the primary reason why Reform has led 200 opinion polls in a row. It's why the majority of this country do support, for example, the mass deportation of illegal migrants. So it's not just me who thinks that or Nigel who thinks that. I think it's demonstrably true. People are seeing just the sheer quantum of people who came. You know, the Tories promised 4 consecutive manifestos to cut net immigration to the tens of thousands, and that's important because that meant people voted time and time again for less immigration. They left office with that number at 1 million a year, let in 12 million people gross, 6 million net. People have had enough of it, Trevor. And we're now at a point where we are seeing in certain instances the erosion of British culture, and it's a really concerning thing.
Is there a danger that Reform is really, to be honest, a one-trick pony with just one prominent figure?
I don't think that's the case.
The one trick being immigration.
Well, no, I don't think that's the case at all. I think, number one, immigration is the number one salience issue for voters today, so that's important. We've talked about a whole range of other issues, but look, is immigration the number one reason why people are motivated to vote for Reform today? Yes, that is objectively true. And I'd argue that is a good thing, given how much anger and frustration now there has been in this country over the levels of immigration and the type of immigration, Trevor, both legal and illegal, for 2 decades.
All right. Well, look, let's talk about policy. Your new recruit, Suella Braverman, says that she doesn't mind if you pursue what she calls socialist policies, such as owning significant chunks of strategic industries, water and energy and so on. You're a socialist wolf in right-wing clothing.
Well, look, number one, none of our policies are socialist. And if you're going to take that argument, for example, we've talked about the fact that Rolls-Royce, an amazing company that makes aerospace engines and small modular nuclear reactors, we could give them a huge contract to build that technology in the UK. And potentially, in return for that, as part of a private commercial arrangement, the state could get a stake for the taxpayer. That is exactly, by the way, what President Trump did with Intel, one of the biggest chip manufacturers in the world. So if you're going to claim that that's socialist, then you'd also have to argue that the Trump administration is socialist too.
But Suella's saying it. Would you like her to sort of have a probationary period of silence?
I think Suella's been invaluable since she joined us. And I think one of the reasons why there's this back and forth for people who can be bothered to go look at it on Twitter, between her and some former Tory frontbenchers, is because she's the person who's saying, you never had any intention of leaving the ECHR, for example. You won't leave the ECHR. So I'm afraid all of this labelling of socialists, look, the British people see past all of this stuff. What they want is manufacturing jobs coming back to Britain. We need, as a country, to be able to build things again.
All right. Let me ask you about an actual policy that you do have. Your leader changed his mind on the two-child benefit cap. He said he wanted to keep it. And then he said he would keep it and use the money raised to slash the duty on beer and business rates on pubs. Forgive me. Reform's policy is to let children go hungry so their parents can get in an extra round.
So number one, that isn't what happened. Nigel's been consistent.
That's exactly what he
throughout
said.
No, hold on. So the first part of what you said was Nigel's changed his mind. That is incorrect. Nigel never changed his mind. Nigel's position has always been, and still is, that he would lift the two-child benefit cap only for British families who are in work. That has always been his position and has been misrepresented. To the second point on the pubs policy, look, what we wanted to do was make sure that this was fully funded. So the position that we have taken with regards to that policy means that that would add back £2.9 billion per year to the public purse. And we are in a position now where, having had almost 70,000 pubs in this country a couple of decades ago, we're going to be down to 10,000, Trevor, by 2040 if we carry on the way that we are. We have to support that industry.
He said it'd save the money and we would spend it to take 10% of duty on pubs, which is about 5p, I think, and fixed business rates. Does that not strike you as a bit odd? Take money away from families and children so people can drink a bit more cheaply?
Well, so firstly, it's really important people understand when the term poverty is used, primarily by left-wing politicians, let's define that term. It is a relative, hold on, it's a relative term, which means that you could literally, this is a mathematical fact, you could increase everybody's incomes tenfold and that statistic would stay the same. But the most important thing is that reform, we are fiscally prudent and we wanted to make sure anything we announced was going to be fiscally neutral.
So are you trying now to say that actually the levels of poverty that are measured by the ONS and others are somehow an illusion, that it's all a bit made up?
No, it's worse than that, because real poverty does exist in this country, Trevor, and absolute poverty does exist in very, very small pockets. If you actually want to do the right thing for as many people as possible in this country, then you need to create social mobility. That has been crushed by the Tory government and now this Labour government. If you take the relative poverty argument, then there will always be a percentage of the population that is in poverty. And what that does nothing for is to help the middle classes or indeed the people who are actually living in absolute poverty.
When you talk about small pockets of poverty, where are we finding them? What are you talking about?
Well, you can look in, let's talk about Wales, for example, right? And this is an argument
Wales
we've made.
is quite a big pocket.
Well, we can talk about, so for example, 15-year-old children in Wales score in the global PISA rankings, the most recognised international educational rankings, below the OECD average, meaningfully below, for example, countries like Turkey, to which the British taxpayer, including Welsh taxpayers, are sending tens of millions of pounds in foreign aid every year. This is an argument we have made many, many times. If we want to help British children, if we want to help British children who are struggling, then the first thing we should do, Trevor, is stop sending tens of billions of pounds of British taxpayers' money abroad to countries with their own space programs, to countries with hypersonic missiles.
I think you slid away to another point. I just asked you where the poverty is, because you're saying there's small problem. I mean, basically, you seem to be saying, actually, there's not that much poverty. Why are we bothered about it? Give people money to buy drink.
With respect, Trevor, you're putting words in my mouth. At no point did I say that. I have said that the measure of poverty that has been used for years now in this country is an unhelpful thing, because because it is relative to the mean and to the median. It means that you are always going to have a certain percentage that's there, and that is not in the interest of the people who actually need it.
Right. Zia Yusuf will return for another round another time. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.